tornadoes that go to a basement, the lowest point in a building. Even cover yourself and keep checking the forecast for those latest updates. And we will continue looking here. We have a bit more information on tornado safety. Again, these number of thunderstorm warnings in effect, but the tornado warning in effect for Halton Hills and Milton. So there are some of your better options and worse options. So a good place to be, an interior part of a well-constructed home or building, a lower level like a basement also is one of your best options in this situation. Melinda, a number of storms popping up. We have severe thunderstorm watches, warnings, and now tornado warnings, and it's a pretty healthy looking cell we can see on your screen there.
You know, Matt, I did speak too soon because we are now starting to see these tornado warnings come into effect here. Let's take a look at this current radar. So we are starting to see a bit of those darker reds and the purples. That's indicating very heavy amounts of rainfall, hail as well. And we could be potentially looking at a tornado. As we look at velocity on radar as well, we can tell if it is rotating or not. So Environment Canada has issued this. That means there is a bit of rotation developing on the storm as well. Here are the areas still in effect for watches and warnings in terms of thunderstorms across southern Ontario. Red indicating severe thunderstorm warning, yellow severe thunderstorm watches, and the pink is the tornado warning as well. So throughout the GTA, we've been monitoring storms throughout the early afternoon. They're now starting to be a bit more organized, a lot more activity, especially across northern sections of the GTA. So that includes Orangeville, Kitchener, Fergus, Newmarket as well, starting to see these storms. They are moving in an eastward direction, these storms as well, that we've been seeing, those severe watches and warnings they've been coming a bit more together. So a bit more of a cluster of storms, a bit more heavier rainfall around the area. Environment Canada did mention in their statements that we could be looking at winds gusting to 70 to 90 kilometers per hour, as well as potential for a tornado, and heavy rainfall is definitely expected. We could be looking at pooling on the roadways, and flash flooding is definitely a factor with these storms. You know, the humidity has been a factor the past few weeks as well, and this is going to continue in through the coming days. And the humidity means that we have quite a bit of moisture in our atmosphere, so that's helping to fuel these storms as well. But overall, throughout the afternoon and continuing into our evening across southern Ontario, stretching from southwestern Ontario in through the Nickel Belt, including the GTA as well, Cottage Country. So these areas are going to be looking at severe storms continuing in through the region. Areas highlighted there in orange on your screen, areas highlighted in yellow will be looking at a non-severe storm, but the potential for these storms as well, they could be traveling eastward and impacting those areas. So they are going to be scattered once again. Strong winds, small hail, and torrential rainfall will be the main factors. We are still going to be looking at a risk into our Friday. We're looking at some showers throughout the early morning, and then the threat for severe storms as well moving later into our afternoon. The evening, they're going to be scattered right along the 401 corridor. Eastern Ontario, including Kingston, could be looking at more severe storms later in our Friday.
A tornado warning currently in effect in southern Ontario for Halton Hills and Milton. Thanks for being with us on the Weather Network. We will track severe weather as it's happening here for the next while as we live stream. Now, the locations impacted in this tornado warning: Milton, Speyside, Blue Springs, Darbyville, Sayers Mills, Scotch Block, and Milton Heights. And of course, a tornado warning is when that threat is imminent. So the advice is stay away from windows and glass doors. And Melinda Singh, our meteorologist, is here to kind of walk us through how these storms are tracking, because it looks like we'll be kind of dealing with this for the next few hours as these storms continue to track eastward. Melinda, a pretty big looking cell there over that tornado warned area.
Exactly, Matt, you've got that right. The cell exactly has been getting a bit bigger as we head in through the past few minutes as well. We've been seeing one cell and then another cell, and they've been coming together as well. So as that happens, they tend to be a bit stronger, looking at widespread rainfall, heavy rainfall, torrential downpours is expected as well. Environment Canada did mention in their warning or watches as well that we could be looking at flash flooding and the potential for water pooling on roadways, tapping into quite a bit of moisture with this. So here's the current look at the cell moving through. So this is the cell here on your screen, including area in Acton that could potentially be producing a tornado as well, Matt. So this area highlighted in pink on your screen, that is the area with a tornado warning. So if you are in these areas, please take shelter immediately, because a tornado warning could definitely be in your area. So here are some tips in terms of best places to shelter yourself from a tornado. So the worst possible options would be a mobile home, a vehicle, especially under an overpass. That's definitely not something that we should be doing, but a good option. An interior room of your home or your building, a basement, cover yourself with a mattress as well. Those are good tips how to keep you and your loved ones safe. So just here looking more so at a diagram as well. So the basement or an interior room, especially one with no windows, because if debris hits the window, that could be looking at some damage to you and your home as well. But let's take a look again at the radar. So more widespread look at what's happening, Matt. So we do have storms moving through, some scattered showers across northern Ontario, the Nickel Belt area, throughout Georgian Bay, but the more active and stronger storms are moving throughout southern Ontario, north of the GTA, including areas along the shores of Huron, Georgian Bay as well. They are moving in an eastward direction, Matt, so we are continuing to see Environment Canada issue these watches and warnings as these storms track eastward.
Yeah, and you see all those areas in yellow. Now the city of Toronto under a severe thunderstorm watch. So we have the tornado warned area. That's when we're seeing the most severe weather right now. But really, a lot of places are in line for these storms, Melinda, like you were saying, which could bring heavy downpours as these systems slowly track over and bring all kinds of rain. Also, those strong winds that you mentioned as well. We have very strong gusts. Obviously, that's especially true in that area that is tornado warned. Here's a look in Fergus, and this is some of the wicked weather, not to mention, not sure if we're seeing it here, but hail also a part of the hazards in some of these warned storms. Now, Melinda, we have a couple of other visuals we'll get to. We also have Mark Robinson out in the field, and we'll look forward to touching base with him to get a look at how it is on the ground in that vicinity of the tornado-warned storms. But, Melinda, soaking rains, we could see localized flooding, and of course, we're going to continue to watch this tornado warning, which again is currently in effect for Halton Hills, and some of the other communities affected in this are Milton, Speyside, Blue Springs, Darbyville, Sayers Mills, Scotch Block, and Milton Heights. And there's that, you see, Melinda, on the far left of the screen there, that best guidance when you are in a tornado warned area. Now's the time to act. Stay away from windows and glass doors. Find a lower level, perhaps maybe even an interior part of your home, away from glass, away from any broken glass type of situation. And Melinda, that is that tornado warned area. Here's another graphic at some of that safety advice. But yes, quite a big cell. And like we mentioned, this is just going to keep tracking eastward as we get towards dinner time. And already the city of Toronto under a severe thunderstorm watch. A number of areas could be seeing severe weather. And Melinda, it's just like I mentioned, it's going to keep tracking as we get closer to dinner time.
Exactly, and even if they are tracking eastward, we could still be developing more storms across the area as well. Here's actually a quick look from Mark in the field near Halton Hills. So he is tracking these storms for us. This could potentially be the one that is producing a tornado within the region as well. But once again, let's take a look at the radar because we are continuing to see storms bubbling up across the area. Here's look, London starting to get into some activity, Grand Bend as well, Hamilton, and like you mentioned, Matt, the city of Toronto is now also in the severe thunderstorm watch, which means that the storm cells could be moving over into the region or developing on its own and producing those hazards that we mentioned across the area. So we continue to track these storms here for you live at the Weather Network. But in terms of the forecast, so we've been seeing and we've been talking about these storm cells moving through. They are quite scattered as well, a bit more of a widespread cluster forming across the area. But in terms of what we've been seeing, these areas highlighted in orange on your screen, we've indicated that we could be looking at more stronger, severe storms, especially that area producing a tornado as well, Matt, and areas highlighted there in yellow. More so non-severe storm, we still could be looking at torrential rainfall because very high precipitable water values, but as well still looking at strong winds and small hail.
Melinda, that was today's storm forecast. I know in a bit we're going to talk about tomorrow's storm threat as well for southern Ontario, but just a quick update on that tornado warning. It's in effect for Halton Hills and Milton. Now, this is located about 6 kilometers south of Acton, moving east at about 25 kilometers per hour. So this tornado, the possible tornado development, very strong wind gusts as well. So we will continue tracking this. But let's go over to a bit of safety advice. Here is some helpful advice for what to do if you're in one of these tornado warned areas.
So where is the safest place to go if a tornado happens? Well, you want to be below ground, so either a storm shelter, or if you don't have a storm shelter, go to your basement. The reason why, not a lot of windows, you've got concrete around you, and even if the whole home is wiped off its foundation, you're still safe. If you don't have a basement, go to the most center part of your home, typically a bathroom, away from windows. And the reason why a bathroom is a good idea is because it usually has strong framing in that part of the home, the center part of the home, plus the pipes in the walls can actually hold that framing together. So you actually want to get inside your bathtub if you can, or a closet, anywhere in the center part of the home away from those windows.
Yeah, so still looking here, tracking our rotation detector here. So the areas highlighted in the orange, that's looking at a bit more of the winds. But when we get into the reds, that's when we'll start to see a bit more of rotation being developed. So if I just pause this on the last possible frame here. So we did see a bit more stronger rotation around the Guelph area, and this is now that rotation that we've been detecting with that tornado warning as well within the areas of Acton and Milton, Halton Hills region. So once again, there is rotation on this storm, so we could be potentially looking at a tornado as well. So once again, just to reiterate the area, so it looks like this has been extended as well, the tornado warning, but in terms, we just have severe thunderstorm watches, in fact, continuing throughout the majority of the region. But, lots of cloud cover within our atmosphere, but we still have lots of CAPE. So CAPE is convective available potential energy, and that is basically thunderstorm fuel to help get these storms going. We also need, moisture that's coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, lots of that humidity we've been feeling, lots of moisture content as well, and a trigger. So the trigger is mainly going to be, sometimes it can be the breezes off the lakes, it can be a frontal boundary, a trough as well. So there's different triggers that we could be looking at, but in terms of today, we have that frontal boundary that's swooping right across the Ontario, as well as lots of mid-level winds to help spin things up, and that's what we have been seeing for the past few hours now, and we will continue to track that into the evening hours as well. But here is that cell that's continuing to move through. They are moving in a northeastward direction, and look, starting to see more coming together as well, Matt, across southwestern Ontario, continuing to see these track in through areas of the GTA later into the coming hours, and potentially throughout the evening hours as well.
Yeah, so a lot of thunderstorm watches in effect, and of course the tornado warning remains in effect for the Halton Hills and Milton area. So if you're in that area, now's the time to act, take shelter, and we'll be continuing to cover this live here with you, and we'd love to see any visuals of, if it is safe to do so, please, we'd love you to share what you're seeing if the storms are in your area. You can tag us on Twitter at Weather Network. Also use the hashtag #ShareYourWeather on on storm as well, that hashtag. Now, Melinda, we talked about this being an ongoing storm threat heading in towards the dinner time hour, getting closer to Toronto, even into the evening. Do you anticipate that it's going to remain this strong? Do we think it might be staying this strong well into the next couple of hours? Do we have any sense looking at our weather models at this time?
You know, Matt, I did some digging as soon as I got in here, and it looks like, conditions are a bit favorable for these to continue to develop as well. I wasn't too certain on the amount of winds, because the winds, so we need to get that spin for these tornadoes. But as we continue to head in through the coming hours, especially into the dinner hour, the threat remains with the threat for a tornado as well. So if you are, once again, throughout southern Ontario, the threat remains as we head in through the coming hours, Matt.
So we'll just keep monitoring these warnings as it stands right now. Like we see all that yellow, lots of severe thunderstorm watches in effect, and those are calling for strong winds, possible hail. And Melinda, something I think we've touched on a fair bit here is the potential for heavy downpours as it slowly tracks. We could see that localized flooding. And again, these are very populated areas that these storms are kind of moving over. So a lot of concrete, really not much grass to soak up this water, so we could see that pooling effect. And I see what you're showing us there, Melinda, is all that energy the storms have to draw on. And we do have a bit of a storm threat for tomorrow, but it does seem like kind of tonight is the night before we head into a fairly nice weekend in southern Ontario. A stormy evening on tap as we continue tracking this weather.
Exactly, Matt. We're going to continue to see some scattered showers throughout the morning hours. Here, let me run through the forecast here. That's that boundary that I was talking about. That is helping to trigger our storms, or these severe thunderstorms throughout the area. It's still going to be over us as we head in through the overnight into our, pre-dawn Friday. We'll continue to see storms moving through. This model exactly is not putting any storms throughout the GTA. It is putting it throughout Cottage Country, Georgian Bay, the Nickel Belt area. But as we head in through, as this low pressure moves right over us into our Friday, we are going to be looking at some more cells popping up in nature, but once again, right around the 401 corridor, extending in through areas of Quebec as well. So could be looking at, some scattered showers throughout Friday morning, very light in nature, but looking at some popcorn cells initiating later into our Friday. But the more areas that could be looking at a more severe threat, Matt, will be in the Kingston region.
So yeah, not as widespread of a thunderstorm threat for tomorrow in southern Ontario, but yeah, we do see parts of eastern Ontario could see some of that severe weather. Now, Melinda, I want to kick to my computer here because we do have just a bit of a information thing. What is the difference between a tornado watch and a warning? Now, of course, the warning is in effect for the Milton, Halton Hills area, and that is the more severe of the two. Now, a watch is when the conditions are favorable for the development of a tornado. A warning is when there's been a report of a tornado or evidence based on radar that there could be one imminent. Now, also want to take a look. It looks like the tornado warning actually just dropped, Melinda, but let's get some of the visuals. We'll unpack that in just a moment. This was earlier in Halton Hills from our storm hunter, Mark Robinson. As you can see, pretty mean looking storm there. Now, to reiterate, the thunderstorm warning has been dropped in the Halton Hills area, and we do have more videos and more visuals we'd like to show you. But I think you can kind of get a sense there on your board, Melinda, that the tornado warning has dropped for that area.
Yes, that's the good news. The tornado warning has dropped, so it looks like we have been seeing a little bit less rotation within that storm. But we are continuing to see quite a bit of rainfall, winds, as well as potential for some hail within those areas that the warning was. So currently, still have these storms ongoing as well. They are coming a bit more into a cluster as well across the northern end of the GTA. But we could be looking at storms tracking in through City of Toronto, Brampton, Scarborough, Markham as well, and through the coming hours, potentially even to the dinner hours as well. And, already looking at some storms, some heavier rainfall across Lake Huron, Georgian Bay, even in through, Elliott Lake, Sudbury, east of Sault Ste. Marie as well, moving in through North Bay. But the more active weather is definitely across southern Ontario, as that boundary that I showed you previously continues to hug right across southern Ontario. So looking at some storms, I'm just going to zoom in here for you, looking at some storm cells throughout the London region, St. Mary's, Mitchell, Grand Bend as well, and then continuing to see these storms move right throughout the GTA. Once again, Environment Canada has issued these watches warnings as well, but in their statement, they are saying that we could be looking at the potential for flash flooding as well as water pooling on roadways. And it's been quite dry throughout southern Ontario. We've been seeing some rainfall recently throughout these thunderstorms, which is the good news. But the grass is still quite dry. When we have such dry soil, it's very hard to soak up rain that is pouring at a very high rate from the atmosphere. So that's why we could be looking at the potential for more flooding and water pooling on the roadways. But a good example of that, Matt, is what we saw in Brampton the past weekend, I believe, a few days ago, where the stationary thunderstorm produced over, what was it, 80 millimeters of rainfall in a very short amount of time.
Yes.
But the good news is it was over farmlands, but we did see visuals of flooding over those farmlands. But imagine if that was a bit further south of Brampton, we could have been looking at, there we go, perfect. We could have been looking at, some of the rainfall moving into the concrete jungle and potentially causing quite a bit of damage and flooding across local communities.
Yeah, and that sort of flooding concern is really what we're talking about for right now and in towards the evening. Although this tornado warning's kind of stolen all the thunder, it's grabbing all of our attention. But yes, there is quite a threat for torrential downpours with all this severe storm activity moving through. But as it stands right now, just in case you just left for a second and you're joining us, these thunderstorm warning no longer in effect for Halton Hills and Milton, but a severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect as there are some thunderstorms continuing to pop off in that area. So strong winds, heavy downpours, even hail in some areas. And as my partner Melinda has been saying here, we're going to see this really just continue to track in towards the evening hours. The city of Toronto currently under a severe thunderstorm watch. We do expect maybe some more severe weather to track towards the city, towards Toronto, in towards that dinner time hour. And here's a look at our radar right now. And Melinda, we're going to kind of stay on it here. We still see lots of yellow. It even looks like some more areas are now under that severe thunderstorm watch. And if the weather gets a bit more severe, you can see that upgraded to the red color, which would mean it would be a severe thunderstorm warning.
Exactly, Matt. So what we've been seeing now is these storms pretty much moving throughout the northern end of the GTA into the GTA as well. So we had that tornado warning that has once dropped. But once we get into the reds, that means severe thunderstorm warnings. That means that, could be looking at that storm making its way over your area. If you are in the areas highlighted in red on your screen, looking at, once again, severe downpours, strong winds, and, gusting upwards to 90 kilometers per hour. That's quite strong. Trees and limbs could be broken with that kind of wind, and the potential for a small hail as well.
Now, we were talking about that severe thunderstorm warning that is no longer in effect, and we have gotten reports, perhaps some spotters actually saw a tornado touch the ground. We will obviously be continuing to look for more visuals to bring you. As soon as we find those, we'll have them right here for you on the Weather Network. But as of right now, it looks like perhaps some unconfirmed reports of a tornado in that tornado warned area. Of course, that warning no longer in effect for Halton Hills and Milton, but it does look like we have quite a long couple of hours in front of us of severe weather as these storms continue to make their way. So Melinda will kind of carry on watching out for all that. But let's recap some of the main hazards. You see the pink there, that's no longer in effect, but for the tornado warning. But
yes.
Melinda, what are some of the main things we're looking at with the severe weather? Obviously a large area we see there with severe weather possible. It's strong winds. What else are we looking at here?
Like you just mentioned, strong winds, small hail, torrential rainfall. I think that's going to be the main threats because many areas are going to be glad for this rainfall. We've been seeing way less than normal throughout the past few months across southern Ontario, which is unfortunate, but
very dry.
Once you get it, you get the rainfall, right? When it rains, it pours. So continuing to see a bit more of that move in through eastern Ontario. But, dynamics in the areas highlighted in yellow are not as severe as the areas highlighted in orange on your screen. So that means that more severe storms will be in the areas highlighted in orange, like strong winds, small hail, torrential rainfall. Don't get me wrong, you could be looking at heavy rainfall within the areas highlighted in yellow as well, Matt, but the criteria that we look at when it comes to distinguishing between a severe storm and a non-severe storm, those areas in orange as a more threat to see those more severe storms.
You know, earlier, Melinda, you mentioned all the rain that the north parts of Brampton got just earlier this week. Now, it does seem like, or that may have been over the weekend, actually. It seems like at Pearson Airport, one of the wettest days of the year was just a few days ago as well. And it seems like with all this stormy activity, you mentioned how dry it's been in southern Ontario. Some of the wettest days of the year seem like they're happening right in front of us with all of this storm activity. But looking ahead, you said there's a bit of a storm threat tomorrow, Melinda, but then into the weekend, looks like we're kind of in the clear, aren't we?
Yes, Matt. So here's a look at Friday's risk. So extending pretty much Windsor in through Ottawa, portions of Montreal into right along 401 corridor. We'll be looking at mainly non-severe storms, but as we do have a bit more dynamics at play throughout the Kingston area, so we could be looking at the potential for more severe storms. But once again, it is going to be heavy rainfall, small hail, and strong winds, and they are going to be quite scattered as well. So I'm even going to play the forecast here for you. So that's that boundary that's helping to trigger our storms as we head later into the afternoon, into the evening, and throughout tomorrow as well. And then as we head later into our early Friday morning, looking at some scattered showers, but then we'll start to see these popcorn cells light up as we head later into the afternoon. Just quickly zooming it in for you here. So around 4 o'clock, 5, that dinner hour later, we'll start to see a bit more of the stormy action make its way through, and then high pressure rolls in. So it is going to be quite a nice weekend and getting into more sunshine as well, Matt.
Well, that's good, and we can look forward to that, but right now we are still dealing with quite a bit of severe weather, and we're right in the thick of it right now. And let's take a look at some of the storm footage that you've been sending us in. Let's take a look here. I believe we have a video queued up. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get to that in a moment, but first Melinda, you're talking about things gradually clearing up heading into the weekend, but just a quick note, even though that tornado warning no longer in effect for Halton Hills and Milton, there is still a severe thunderstorm watch that does warn of that possibility of a tornado developing. So obviously the greatest threat of a tornado will be when you see the tornado warning issued, but with a lot of these storms, Melinda, we're still seeing that potential. What kind of variables are at play? What do we need to see in the atmosphere to really see that heightened risk of a tornado?
So, you know, the main things for thunderstorms is we need energy, we need cape, we also need moisture, and when it comes to the threat for a tornado, we need a wind shear. So wind shear is basically when we have winds moving at different heights within the atmosphere. So it could be moving at this level, moving at this direction, another level, at another direction.
Yeah.
And that's what helps to initiate that spin. And when thunderstorms start to spin, it could potentially, you know, in more simple terms, produce a tornado.
Yeah, and are we seeing a fair bit of those kind of factors? I mean, obviously we just had that tornado warning.
Exactly.
Do you kind of get a sense that there's a lot of those factors that could come together for more of these warnings, or again, possibly a actual tornado touching down?
You know, sometimes lake breezes as well helps to give way to a bit of spin up in our atmosphere, so that can also help to give way to a bit of rotation.
So we'll keep an eye out, but as of right now, no longer any tornado warnings in effect, but a number of severe thunderstorm watches in southern Ontario, including for the city of Toronto and Melinda. Like you've been mentioning, heavy downpours, one of the main concerns. And here is the look at the difference between a severe thunderstorm watch and warning. Obviously, a watch is when, hey, the conditions are there. You might see some of those severe storms pop off. The warning is issued, much like a tornado warning, when the threat is imminent, when that severe weather is occurring, or, you know, really is that time to act. So right now, Melinda, it looks like a bit of maybe more of a quiet zone here as we're waiting for really just the only severe thunderstorm warning in effect is the area where the tornado warning was in effect for Halton Hills and Milton. Everywhere else, a bit less of a severe situation right now, but like we've been kind of mentioning, it seems like over the next few hours, we could see lots of storms popping up. The radar that you had up earlier, not looking too friendly. Lots of pretty mean looking storm cells on there. And Melinda, I guess that's something we're going to keep tracking as long as that threat is in effect here.
Exactly, Matt. I did want to mention, though, that we did see, you know, stormy conditions throughout our Thursday, Friday, but lots of sunshine into our weekend. So that is a bit more of, you know, good news to look forward to into our weekend as well. Looks like our system here is a bit late because we are continuing. We do not have a warning in place. It's just severe thunderstorm watches. So we are continuing to monitor that here. The system hasn't updated itself as yet, which is a bit unfortunate in terms of showing you what's going on. But let's take a look, a more dive in as well. So these storms are continuing to move throughout the region here. So there is those stronger storms moving throughout Orangeville, Atlaston, Fergus as well, and pushing into Newmarket. And then on the back end, we are also seeing storms, I did mention this earlier, throughout London, St. Mary's, Mitchell, and then moving through Listowel. We are still tracking some more storms. These ones are getting a bit stronger in nature across Owen Sound, Markdale, and then we do have more scattered showers and the threat for more severe storms as well across Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, North Bay. And then these storms will potentially make its way in through eastern Ontario, starting to see some scattered showers throughout Bobcaygeon, Peterborough as well, Matt. And then throughout the overnight lingering in, more scattered showers into our Friday morning, and then the threat will continue later into our Friday, but not as widespread as we've been seeing today.
Yeah, you got it, Melinda. Looks like lots of severe weather on tap here, and we get a good look there. And I think in a moment, we'll get to some of the visuals on Twitter, and we encourage you, if it is safe to do so, and you have some videos to share or photos of severe weather, tag us on Twitter at the Weather Network. Here is Fergus, which we saw some severe weather. Now, I'm going to try to pull up on my personal computer right in front of me here. We do have a very interesting time-lapse video of some of the severe weather. This is from Mark Robinson in Halton Hills, and Melinda, check that out. Very severe. Now, this was a bit before the tornado warning, but I mean, you could maybe assume that this was the same kind of cell that had that rotation that warranted the tornado warning. Lots of great visuals to share. We'll continue pouring through those on our live coverage of severe weather here on the Weather Network. My name is Matt Hamill. Above me there on screen is the great meteorologist Melinda Singh. And the lightning, another big concern. Melinda, we just saw lightning in that video, and kind of get a sense here. Are we looking at quite a bit of lightning with these storms?
When I showed this product earlier, we were only seeing one storm cell that was looking at lightning. But that has once grown, and we've been seeing over 50 strikes on that storm, and other storms around the area as well, producing quite a bit of lightning now. So we are getting a bit more into more active weather as we head into the afternoon. This will potentially linger in towards the dinner hour as well.
Yeah, and we'll continue getting to some of the great visuals we're seeing on social media. Of course, you can tag us on Twitter at Weather Network. You can use the hashtag OnStorm and see some of those current conditions. Melinda, I guess like a bit of heat to work with. That's one of those factors that's maybe kind of fueling some of the severe weather. But interestingly enough, after the stormy action this evening, tomorrow maybe a bit more of a threat of some non-severe storms, and then Saturday it actually cools down a little bit. I think the high about 23 degrees on Saturday, so a little bit of perhaps a cooling effect after all this severe weather. It's been a run of stormy days. It seems like we've kind of just been dealing with stormy weather in perpetuity. I mean, we had a bit of a break yesterday, it seemed like, but certainly looks like tonight lots of fuel, like you're saying, Melinda, for these severe storms.
Let's just go ahead and pull up the 7-day forecast so
Sure.
viewers can get a visual of what we're talking about. So Friday, a bit stormy across the GTA, Saturday, Sunday, lots of sunshine, still feeling into, a bit more like humidity as we head into our Sunday, but stormy conditions again as we head into Monday and Tuesday, Matt.
You got it, Melinda. Great look ahead at our forecast there. We will stay with you as we track severe weather here live on the Weather Network. Thank you for being with us. We're going to step aside and keep on our eye on some of these severe storms. So thank you for being with us. For Melinda Singh and myself, Matt Hamill, and all of us here at the Weather Network, thank you for being with us, and we'll continue to monitor severe weather in southern Ontario with severe thunderstorm watches in effect.
Looks like we have a bit of technical difficulties there with Matt. I can't hear him right now, so I'll just get some stuff going here. So here's a quick look here at the severe thunderstorm watches that we have in effect. They actually have been extended northward into Owen Sound, Barrie, Durham, Mount Forest as well. We still have that severe thunderstorm warning in effect across Georgetown, Milton, Halton Hills. That's the area. That's where the tornado warning was issued earlier on throughout the afternoon. That has once dropped, but we are continuing to see a severe thunderstorm warning into that area. Quick look at what we've been seeing throughout the past hour in terms of rainfall. You know, we've been seeing 50, almost 60 millimeters just west of Elora, even throughout the Guelph region, 52 millimeters there, and continuing to see rainfall throughout Newmarket. Looks like we have Matt back with us here.
Yeah, a little battery situation. Can you hear me now, Melinda?
I can hear you.
Everybody at home as well. Okay, great. So yes, we saw earlier that tornado warned storm, and now it's just a lot of severe thunderstorm watches. And for that area that was under the tornado warning, of course, that's no longer in effect. You still see that red there, Melinda, and like you were saying, that is where the severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect. So that is where it looks like the most severe weather is happening right now. But that's quite a large area, Melinda, in yellow, where we're seeing those severe thunderstorm watches in effect. And what are some of the main hazards we're looking at? You were recapping the heavy downpours. Some areas already seeing quite a bit of rain. That seems to be one of the main concerns here, some of that localized flooding.
Exactly. We've been talking about that torrential rainfall, heavy downpours. Still looking at the potential for flash flooding, especially if these storms become a bit more slow moving and water could potentially be pooling on roadways and highways, things like that to be of concern. They are going to be quite scattered, but more widespread in terms of we've been seeing lots of areas under the watches, and especially in terms of thunderstorms right across southern Ontario and even across northern Ontario as well. Not in terms of thunderstorms, but still seeing a bit of a band of rainfall making its way through.
Now, Melinda, worth noting, we have some storm chasers from the Weather Network who were following earlier that tornado warned storm, and they are saying that what appeared to be a tornado touching the ground. Now, this is unconfirmed reports, and we'll continue to touch base. Now, here is Mark Robinson's live camera, and he is kind of in that area of Halton Hills and Milton, where we saw that tornado warning in effect earlier. As you can see, Melinda, some pretty scary looking clouds there for sure, and we'll continue to look on social media for some of the videos that are pouring in. We'll continue to present that to you, you at home during our live coverage. But Melinda, as it stands right now, it looks like for the next few hours, we do have this severe storm threat as it's just tracking in that east, kind of northeast direction. Right now, Melinda, I just want to recap where's under a severe thunderstorm watch, which does include the city of Toronto. We also have Shelburne, Mansfield, Northern Dufferin County, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County. Also under severe thunderstorm watch right now, Hanover, Dundalk, Southern Grey County, Barrie, Collingwood, Hillsdale, Caledon, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham, really a lot of the GTA. We also see Orangeville, Innisfil, and New Tecumseth, Grand Valley, Southern Dufferin County. And Melinda, it doesn't look like we're out of the woods yet. The tornado warning no longer in effect, but kind of looks like, and you can give us your point of view as the meteorologist here, this severe weather that we'll probably be watching for the next few hours.
You know, Matt, my eyes are kind of right over Milton, Georgetown, Halton Hill area. That's where Mark Robinson is currently located. You know, this cell has pretty much been sitting on that area, so we could be looking at quite a bit of rainfall, especially as they continue to track in an eastward direction. You know, looking at some lighter showers and some thunderstorms making its way across the north end of the GTA and through Arthur, Shelburne, Orangeville as well. Even if you make its way in through Georgian Bay, Owen Sound area, Collingwood, these storms are coming together a bit more. We're looking at them popping up earlier, but now they're, you know, becoming a bit more conjoined and looking at more heavier rainfall. The reds, the yellows, that's indicating quite heavy rainfall, especially in those regions. And that's why Environment Canada has issued those watches as well. We could be looking at more severe weather throughout the coming hours, Matt.
And you mentioned Mark Robinson out in the field. We saw his camera earlier, that live shot in that area that was tornado warned, the Halton Hills, Milton area. We'll continue to touch base with Mark, who's on the ground, getting us some incredible visuals. But Melinda, some of the main hazards we're looking at as these storms continue to track in the Greater Toronto area and some surrounding communities. Heavy downpours, strong wind gusts up to 90 kilometer per hour gusts, and a risk of a tornado continues for a lot of these areas that are under that severe thunderstorm watch. And we'll check back in with Mark Robinson right now here, Melinda. And there he is. Mark, how's it looking out there in the field?
Yeah. You know what? This is a very interesting storm. This one, if you're looking right here, this is the inflow region. This is sort of what I would call the wall cloud. This one earlier definitely had multiple funnels going on, potentially something touching down. Very, very hard to tell because quite often it's behind trees, so it's tricky to see everything, especially when you're talking about the Niagara Escarpment area. Now, what you're actually seeing right here is the air flowing into the storm here and actually condensing on the one edge. And if you were to actually watch this in fast motion, you'd actually watch the cloud forming up and shooting up into this inflow region here. And right behind it, back over in here, so we're looking right there, that's where we're getting the cold air coming down out of the storm like this. So I'm expecting rain to actually start coming and hitting me from here. So I may have to move a little bit east, but this is a very, very slow moving storm. So the bigger danger with this one and a lot of the storms today is the flooding, just because it's sitting over one area or back building or even sort of essentially moving not very fast at all and just giving us those potential flooding conditions in the various communities in and around the Niagara Escarpment north of Milton.
Now, Mark, you've been out here following these storms for the last little while. You talk about that some of the heavier rain you anticipate to be coming here. What other some of those weather hazards have you been seeing? Because we know strong winds have also been one of those factors Environment Canada is warning of.
Yeah, definitely. There was some very, very strong outflow from a couple of the storms. But the biggest thing that I saw today, and if you look at my Twitter feed, you can see some of it, is the violent lightning that was happening with this storm earlier. I can hear a little bit of rumbling off to my west, but not too much at the moment. So there's not a lot of lightning on this storm, at least in this core right here. But earlier, the lightning, it was terrifying. Like I was not getting out of the car simply because I'm safe inside the car. And no, it's not the rubber tires. It's actually the Faraday cage effect. It's the metal shell around you. So I knew I was safe inside that car as long as I wasn't licking any part of the inside of the car. I'd be totally safe if I was hit in the car. But right now, not that much lightning. I can come out and show you exactly what we're seeing with these storms. And this is some fascinating structure to see with these storms.
Mark, we appreciate you being out there for us, and we'll continue touching base here as you're continuing to get us some great visuals to share here on the program. Now, what's your next move? I understand you're maybe lucking out a bit here where, look, we kind of see the lightning on the map, but I guess, Mark, we'll see you kind of setting up shop and touch base with you later.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to follow this one for a bit, and just make sure that I was just taking a look over it this way because I heard a rumble, and I thought I just want to make sure there's no lightning over there. That's why I disappeared from the camera for a second. But I'm just going to follow this one. Once this one's done, I know there's another set of storms coming from the west. I'll probably go over there and check those ones out.
Brilliant. Mark, always great touching base with you. We look forward to our next update here from Mark Robinson and Melinda as we get back here in studio. Looking pretty wicked out there, and as it stands right now, that severe thunderstorm warning still in effect for that area, Halton Hills and Milton. A lot of severe thunderstorm watches in surrounding areas.
Yes, Matt, looking at Mark's camera, very dark, ominous skies. So if it was me, I would probably be indoors.
That's right. That's right. Now, and that is really what is called for under that severe thunderstorm warning. Now, if you're in one of the areas, maybe we can pull up the map of all those yellow warnings on the board. And those are the areas where, hey, if the watch is in effect, if you're in the area under yellow, it's not exactly saying that the dangerous weather is occurring imminently, but it is a warning that, or perhaps giving you the notice that perhaps those factors are there where severe weather could materialize as the system develops. And Melinda, we see kind of closer as we now are approaching the dinner time hour. It does look like getting a bit closer to the city of Toronto, but as it stands right now, mostly severe thunderstorm watches, but Environment Canada is still noting with a lot of those watches, there is still that risk of a tornado.
Exactly, Matt. I am going to show you here the rotation detector. So basically, we're looking at all the greens, and when you can spot out the reds, that means there's a bit of rotation within. So we did see a bit throughout the Guelph area. You know what? Let me pause it here so it's easier to look at here. There we go. So we are seeing a bit more pockets of red, indicating, you know, it's a bit more rotation north of Brampton, east of Fergus, the Acton area. So could potentially be looking at the development for rotating storms throughout the next couple hours, meaning we could be looking at Environment Canada issuing tornado watches or warnings as well.
And Melinda, when we see some of these storms getting organized, like we kind of get a sense of on your map there, is there any kind of like training effect? Are they going to sort of kind of group together? Could we see like a powerful line of storms? What kind of risk is there with sort of that training effect?
You know, today our threat is more scattered.
Okay.
So when we see more of that line, it's usually when the frontal boundary is, you know, draped across southern Ontario. But right now, it's mainly horizontal across southern Ontario. So we'll be looking at too much of storms coming into a line, but they could be becoming more of a cluster rather than a line.
Thank you for joining us. If you're watching on TV, we appreciate you as we continue our live coverage of severe storms. And let's take a look at some of the severe weather. This in Guelph, where Guelph was under a severe thunderstorm warning earlier. That has now been downgraded to a severe thunderstorm watch. This is near Halton Hills, and the lightning, Melinda, you've been highlighting that, and now it seems like the tornado warning is kind of taken, oh boy, the slow motion. Amazing stuff. We encourage you to share your visuals with us as well. You can tag us on Twitter at Weather Network. Of course, use that hashtag OnStorm or the hashtag ShareYourWeather. Melinda, again, we've been putting a lot of emphasis on the tornado threat, which obviously is a severe safety issue. We'll continue watching that. But really the main threat we're seeing right now is the heavy rain, the heavy downpours. You were touching on some of the rainfall totals earlier. We're getting reports 50 to 60 millimeters have fallen in the Acton area. And that kind of dovetails with some of the areas that have been under those more severe weather warnings. And we'll just continue looking at some of this precipitation because localized flooding, that in addition to the wind, really the heavy downpours, one of those main concerns over the next few hours.
Exactly, Mike. You've got that right here. I just pulled up that graphic for you just to give a more of a better sense of what we've been seeing. So right over, I believe that's Acton, 57 millimeters. Throughout west of Fergus, looking at almost 60, and then in through north of Newmarket, just northwest of there as well, over 20 millimeters of rainfall. So we could potentially be looking at this continuing in through the coming hours and lingering into the overnight as well. These storms are a bit more slow moving, so we are seeing a bit more heavier rainfall localized on through one area, Matt.
So we will continue to look out for any more tornado warnings. Of course, the one earlier for Halton Hills and Milton has now dropped. We talked about the heavy downpours, and even Mark Robinson, who we'll touch base with shortly here as he continues to track that pretty severe storm that he's right in the vicinity of. Hail as well, Melinda. Another thing, some smaller sized hail to medium sized hail with some of these storms, and looks like you're seeing some areas where perhaps hail has already been a factor in purple there.
That's exactly. So these areas have, the model is not forecasting, it has seen these areas with that hail threat there. So north of Mount Forest, in that area, just north of Guelph as well, we've been seeing a bit more of hail, and that's because, you know, we have these updrafts and then they bring the hail down with the downdrafts. So once we get a bigger storm, sometimes means bigger sizes of hail as well. But right now, they are looking at just small size, which is, you know, better news.
No doubt, but a lot of factors with the severe storms we're covering here. This is our kind of map that we've been looking at all day. And as you can see, southern Ontario really kind of in the epicenter of the stormy activity for today, and that's really how it's been panning out. And Melinda, can we talk a bit about what we're looking at here, and then maybe over the next few hours as this continues to track, maybe some of the other areas that might be looking out for some severe thunderstorm warnings, possibly even tornado warnings being issued?
Exactly. You know, we've been seeing, well, we did see one tornado warning already because, you know, we're getting into more stronger winds in the mid-levels, so it's helping to give a bit of spin within our atmosphere. So we could be looking at these storms rotating.
Yeah.
And then as we head later into the evening hours, the potential is still there. It's going to continue. Just got some notes here from our other meteorologists here at the Weather Network. So continuing to see widespread rainfall, 25 to 50 millimeters as well. Fergus west to Drayton, they've been seeing quite a bit of rainfall. And you know, they are developing over the warned region areas. So could be looking at, you know, heavy amounts of rainfall continuing in through the coming hours. You know, I mentioned Environment Canada, they did issue that in the warning as well as the watches that could be looking at flash flooding as well as the potential for, you know, water pooling over the roadways, the highways, that sort of a thing.
That is Melinda Singh. My name is Matt Hamill. We are tracking with you live severe weather in southern Ontario. Now, Melinda, I want to ask you a bit about, we're getting kind of close to the weekend here, maybe a preview of is this stormy weather going to continue, but it looks like even into tomorrow, still a bit of a storm risk.
Yeah, let's take a look at 7 days for the city of Toronto. So basically, a storm threat continues. It is going to be more non-severe in nature, but Saturday, Sunday, going to be quite a nice day if you're heading out to enjoy the CNE or a Blue Jays game or something like that. But as we head into the next week, you know, active weather returns. But look at the humidity. It feels closer to like 36, so lots of moisture in our air. Yeah,
Saturday's interesting. 23 feeling like 25, so below that seasonal. Typically you see about 25 degrees this time of year. Only getting up to an extra 2 degrees with the humidex. So is sort of maybe some of these storms kind of cleansing us of that humidity? Do you have any inclination as to why we have such a comfortable Saturday on tap?
Basically, we have that front moving through us right now, and then we'll get a bit of a change of wind direction. Yeah. So the winds will be coming out from the south. Looks like it'll be coming from the north, northwest, so a bit more cooler.
Marvelous. So a little bit more storm potential for Friday in Toronto. Really nothing like we expect to see continue into this evening. So maybe a chance for tomorrow, but let's take a look at some more of the visuals now as we've kind of recapped that your weekend's actually looking pretty good, but quite a Thursday is in the works, and it looks like this severe weather will continue for the next few hours. And there's Halton Hills. I mean, this is one of the best videos we've seen so far. The lightning, incredible. And Melinda, it's looking like it's just going to be a few hours of this type of situation. Now, we can see out there some areas have been getting some heavy downpours. Some of those other hazards mentioned by Environment Canada. Strong wind gusts up to 90 kilometers per hour. Rainfall amounts of 70 to 75 millimeters in a few areas. So, Melinda, we've gotten reports like, hey, the Acton area seen up to 60 millimeters, but a lot of communities under these severe thunderstorm watches right now could see up to 75. And Melinda, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a product of kind of the slow-moving nature of these storms. They're just kind of hovering and dumping all kinds of rain.
You got that right. I just want to quickly highlight the latest Environment Canada severe thunderstorm warning for Halton Hills, Milton. Hazards, heavy downpours with local rainfall amounts approaching 50 millimeters. And we could be looking at a P2 dime-sized hail as well. That is where Mark is located. And these storms moving eastward at roughly 25 kilometers per hour. So definitely not that fast moving.
And again, worth noting, there's no longer that severe warning in effect, that tornado warning in effect, but there is still a risk of a tornado with a lot of these storms. And there's a look at our current areas that are under the severe thunderstorm watches in yellow. And Melinda, I guess worth noting the difference between a severe thunderstorm warning and a watch. A watch is when, hey, the ingredients are there for some very severe weather to pop off. A warning is when it's time to act and when that threat is imminent. Let's check back in with Mark Robinson, our storm hunter out in the field. Mark, what's the latest update for us? The weather is looking pretty wild out there.
Yeah, actually, this one, the storm we're looking at is due to this. We're sort of looking due west at this point, towards the inflow region of this storm. I'm just going to figure out exactly where I am. I'm just to the northeast of Milton, so very close to the GTA. And this area here is where sort of all the warm, moist air flowing right into here. It's perfect fuel for these storms. I saw one lightning bolt on this, not anything like what we saw earlier. where we had just, it was a lightning barrage. It was just absolutely incredible with these storms. Now, there's a potential for these storms to spin up, to have some rotation again. Not seeing too much anymore. It was a lot of the real spin-ups, the really rapidly rotating storms happened earlier in the afternoon. But there still is that potential because we've got this boundary sort of sitting all through right here. The storms are sort of running along that boundary and getting themselves just a little bit spun up. But the big issue with these storms, and you can see that, I'm going to show you, if you look sort of right there, that sort of very uniform gray, white, that's all rain. It's very, very heavy rain. When I was in the core of one of these storms earlier, there was so much rain coming down that the streets were flooding. It was quite dangerous to drive. That is going to be the biggest danger with these, other than lightning. Lightning's always the number one. I always like to say that. But the real danger with these storms is going to be that flash flooding. I know that we needed some rain for the grass, but not quite that much.
And like you mentioned, not really the kind of conditions you want to be driving out in, but we appreciate you. You have all your training. You're out there safely gathering this footage for us, so we appreciate that, Mark. Now, have you gotten any sense? You mentioned you might have seen what appeared to be during that tornado-warned storm, kind of something in that alley. Have you seen some funnel clouds or maybe some scary-looking clouds out there? What's kind of been the rub looking up in the sky?
Oh, yeah. Well, near the town of Ustik, we definitely had a storm that was very rapidly rotating, and then again, and also near Elora. Both of those storms basically had big funnels that were just almost touching down, but just so rapidly spinning that I was very worried for the towns, because those ones could have easily produced a full tornado. And they were, 100 feet from me, and I was quite safe because the tornado, would have moved past and away from me rather than right at me. But still, we're talking about a densely populated area, Southern Ontario, and when we do get tornadoes, they can be especially dangerous because we have so much urban infrastructure in Southern Ontario.
Yeah, you've nailed it. And a lot of these, worth noting, a lot of these thunderstorm watches are still warning of that risk of a possible tornado. So we'll continue tracking that. We appreciate you out in the field, Mark. We'll be touching base with you throughout the evening here. And thank you very much. We'll check back in later, Mark. Thank you. Now, Melinda, let's talk about some of the lightning we're looking at, because like Mark was saying, that's one of those dangers that you have to really focus on as well, in addition to the heavy downpours and strong winds. And it looks like seeing quite a bit of lightning here. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, for sure, Matt. I also just want to highlight, even if it's not, raining over your area and it's still quite cloudy, you could still get lightning. So even when we have these warnings and watches out, it's best to heed them, because I've seen it in instances, especially across the United States, where people have, rain's done, let's go outside, but you can still get lightning from these storms.
Let's recap, Melinda, for anybody watching on our live channels on the Weather Network YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We have severe thunderstorm watches in effect for the city of Toronto, Halton Hills, Milton, Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham, Newmarket, Georgina, Northern York Region, Waterloo, Wellington, Dufferin, Innisfil, Hanover, Dundalk, Southern Grey County, Owen Sound, Blue Mountains, Northern Grey County, Barrie, Collingwood, and Hillsdale. And the area that had the tornado warning in effect earlier, Melinda, for the Halton Hills, Milton area, they are still under a severe thunderstorm warning. So that is where we are seeing the most severe weather. That's where Mark Robinson, our storm chaser, who we just saw, is out there. And it does look like some pretty severe weather, but there's a lot of cells popping up on the map there, Melinda. Can you kind of walk us through? It's not quite an organized line, but quite a mass of storm cells tracking across our screen there.
Yeah, these are becoming a bit more of a training storms, but that one over Mark, that storm cell still has caught my eye because it's very slow moving. That's what Mark mentioned earlier. Stationary, lots of heavy downpours. Could be looking at the potential for flash flooding and water pooling on roadways. But yes, they are becoming a bit more of a cluster, a bit more organized. So continuing to look at these: Stratford, Listowel, especially moving throughout the city of Brampton. Vaughan starting to get into the lighter rainfall, potentially getting into more heavier rainfall in the coming hours, as well as Dundalk, Collingwood. Did see storms moving throughout Owenstown as well, Barrie as well, and throughout portions of Cottage Country, Bobcaygeon and Peterborough, starting to get into more active weather as well. And across the north, looking at pretty much an area of scattered showers, not thunderstorms because there's no lightning, but across southern Ontario there is lots of lightning and thunderstorms available.
Let's take a look at some more of the visuals that have been coming in. This is a wonderful time-lapse video. This is near St. Mary's from earlier today, I mean, not that long ago. Kind of what you're talking about, Melinda, lots of cloud cover, and like Mark was pointing out, you can definitely see the rainfall associated with this system as well. Now, really not great timing here, Melinda. We're getting close to drive home time from work, and as it stands right now, just the severe thunderstorm warning for that one area, but we could see quite a difficult drive home with those strong winds. You combine that with heavy rainfall. No matter how fast you get those wiper blades going on the car, it's a pretty dangerous situation. So, Melinda, could you kind of backtrack? You talked about some training storm system. What exactly is that about? What kind of hazards, what kind of threat do we see if the storms do sort of organize in that way?
So basically we're just looking at a bigger cluster of storms over an area, more heavier rainfall as well associated with that because they are coming together. So like we have different cells, but we have them coming together. So a larger area of cities and municipalities will be looking at rainfall, the potential for hail there as well as they become a bit bigger in size. And we could be looking at, you know, once again, those strong winds, those ones that Mark was talking about, 50 to possibly 90 km/h wind gusts.
Let's go back to Mark's live shot. I think Mark is, he's behind the wheel right now, but we got his live camera, and it continues to be quite a severe storm in the Halton Hills and Milton area. Now, as of the last update from Environment Canada, the severe thunderstorm, it looks like really the biggest, angriest cell that we're looking at was kind of near the Speyside area, moving east at 25 kilometers per hour. Heavy downpours, rainfall amounts approaching 50 millimeters. And Melinda, you mentioned it, some of that hail, pea to dime-sized hail. Halton Hills, Acton included in that, Georgetown, Limehouse, Moore Park, Marywood Meadows, Stewarttown, Delrex, and Ashgrove. Now, we do have, it looks like everything grouped up kind of pretty nicely there, Melinda, and it continues to track in that east direction. It looks like it might even be getting towards the city of Toronto, maybe a bit after that dinner time hour, some of the more severe weather, but I mean, you could walk us through it. Certainly some pretty healthy looking storms here.
Yes, for sure. So it's actually one of the models that are currently showing us current time. So once we get into the forecast, we'll start to see those storms continue to move in the eastward direction, potentially southeast. So we could be looking at them impacting here around 6, 7 o'clock, Vaughan, Markham, Scarborough, the city of Toronto itself as well. And then as we continue throughout the overnight, then pushing in through east end of the GTA, you know, Pickering, Oshawa, Cobourg, Newmarket as well. And then later into our, you know, overnight hours, pre-dawn Thursday, we'll start to see more of those storms across the shores of Huron and through those regions. And then potentially bringing in some scattered showers across the GTA for our early morning commute on Friday.
Yeah.
And then the threat for, you know, widespread storms once again into our afternoon hours, but you know, it isn't going to be as widespread, which is the good news. It's pretty much going to be right across the 401 corridor into Quebec.
Yeah, so this is for tomorrow, where we still have some of that non-severe, that yellow for lots of southern Ontario, for the city of Toronto, for Niagara, a lot of the Golden Horseshoe area, all the way down to the southwest. Melinda, can we take a quick look at today's storm threat? Because as you can see, a much more significant storm threat for our Thursday. And you see that large area of orange where the severe storms are most likely. And that's kind of what we're dealing with today. So maybe, like you said, a little bit of storm action lingering into tomorrow, but the most severe weather does appear to be happening right now.
Exactly, and you know, that will continue through the coming hours, potentially lingering into the dinner hour as well. But they are going to be continuing to move eastward. They are slow moving, roughly at 25 kilometers per hour. But you know, with that slow moving, it's still a threat to see torrential rainfall, flash flooding, and pooling over roadways and highways and that sort of a thing. So continuing to track them moving eastward. Let's take another look here at the live radar. So just play it through for us. So continuing to track these storms, a bit more of that getting into that training thunderstorm. So we're starting to see them becoming a bit more of a cluster and then forming quite a bit more rainfall.
Yeah, so they're moving slow. That can bring lots of rainfall. They're kind of clustering together. So if you're kind of in the wrong place, you could have essentially multiple cells moving across you, and it could probably bring just a ton of rain over a prolonged period of time. So we are going to continue to look out for that localized flooding risk. And if you're watching on TV, welcome back as we continue to cover these severe storms live on the Weather Network. Melinda Singh there on your screen. My name is Matt Hamill. Now, Melinda, we're looking at lots of yellow, and just to reiterate, those are the severe thunderstorm watches. Now, let's see some of the visuals we've been getting out there, because it has been quite an afternoon as we now enter the evening. This in Guelph, that area earlier, I believe, under a severe thunderstorm warning. Here's Halton Hills, where the tornado warning was in effect earlier. Lots of lightning. Our storm chaser, Mark Robinson, highlighting the dangers of that lightning. This is near St. Mary's, a wonderful time-lapse video. Look at the rain start to come in here, Melinda. Just a lot of moisture, something we've seen a lot of now. This is near Arthur. Certainly kind of has that funnel cloud looking effect. Melinda, can you break down what you're seeing here in that particular video?
Yeah, it did look like a bit of a funnel coming to fruition there, but it's kind of hard to tell from a video. Of course, it's just that far out, but you did see quite a bit of rainfall there as well. So what was the location of that video again? I didn't quite catch it.
It was near Arthur.
Okay, so that's around the area, a bit more north as well. So, but there is potential to see rotation all across the area. But as we get into, those mid-level winds, we'll start to see a bit more of the potential for spin-ups, which can cause rotation. Here's a look at what we have seen in terms of hail throughout the area. So we did see some just east of Elora, north of Guelph, Mount Forest as well. Saw a bit of hail. I am going to show you what we saw in terms of rainfall in the last 6 hours.
Wow.
Lots of rainfall, over 60 millimeters in these localities here. Desumans is Acton, and then just north of Elmira as well. So quite a bit of rainfall. Continuing to track this, starting to get into some more heavier rain. That's that cell from a shot from St. Mary's as well that we just saw in Milverton as well. So quite a bit of rainfall is falling throughout the area. Some areas are like, turning on their TV to see us going live here, but not getting into much of the rainfall because they are quite scattered in nature, but now they are becoming more of training thunderstorms.
Isn't that how it's been the past few days? It seems like it's been a week and a half of stormy weather, but it's been very hit or miss. Some areas getting, I believe we had radar indication that you mentioning that storm north of Brampton, like 100+ millimeters. Thankfully missing like the heart of Brampton. Like it would have been quite messy for all that to fall in the city. Not a lot for that. Places for that water to go, but very hit or miss. The past few days we've seen some areas missing out on the rain entirely. Not a bad coverage as we're seeing. This is the last 6 hours, pretty consistent, like you mentioned, a little bit of a clustering effect. So very widespread rain, and we're not done yet, Melinda. Let's take a look at some more visuals here. This is some of the downpours. I can almost kind of see some hail in there. This is in that Fergus area. Earlier we saw that viz near Arthur. So really a lot of that severe weather kind of grouped geographically in that area. Continuing to look at downpours like this. That's one of the main hazards, Melinda, we've been highlighting. Heavy downpours, localized flooding, but also 70 to 90 kilometer per hour wind gusts and still that risk of tornado. So Environment Canada including that in all those severe thunderstorm watches, which are encompassing quite a large area of southern Ontario right now.
Exactly. Here's just a quick look of satellite on top of getting the total amount of lightning strikes. So we did see quite a bit with that cell over where Mark is, Halton Hills, Milton. We're continuing to see, some more popping up as well through Midland, Orangeville, but that's mainly going to be in terms of lightning. But, let's take it back to the radar and see in terms of what is, continuing to make its way through. So these storms, lots of energy at place. You know, our atmosphere is a bit volatile in a sense because we've been seeing quite a bit of energy, lots of CAPE, which is convective available potential energy, and that's what helps to fuel these thunderstorms, Matt. So once we get them going, we get that lift in our atmosphere, and then we get a bit more of that punch. We can start to see these storms developing, and now they're becoming a bit more cluster, what we know as training thunderstorms, which produces more heavier rainfall. They are slow moving, so the more rainfall we get, we could be looking at potential for flash flooding and water pooling on the roadways.
And let's kind of touch base. Could you maybe pull up the 7-day forecast for Toronto? Because that might give us a sense of how things are shaping up for the GTA. Now for Southern Ontario. Still a bit of a storm risk on Friday, and that's mostly for the Golden Horseshoe area, Niagara, Hamilton included in that. But heading into the weekend, things really clearing up, Melinda. We have actually a bit of a cooler temperature as well. And then, unfortunately, it looks like Monday, Tuesday bring in maybe a bit more unsettled weather.
You know, we have high pressure rolling over for the weekend, so we are going to be looking at clear skies, lots of sunshine available as well, and then we'll get more into low pressure moving into our Monday and Tuesday. So the potential for a threat for thunderstorms is definitely there. Looks like an 80% pop as well.
Look at the humidity as well, like an extra 8 degrees tacked on there. And this is not just a Toronto problem. It looks like this is the kind of humidity we'll be seeing in many parts of Southern Ontario. Tuesday, a 9-degree bump when you factor in the humidex, feeling like 36, so some late summer heat. Those are all above seasonal temperatures for our Monday, Tuesday as well. So we can look ahead to that, perhaps some more stormy, hot and humid weather early next week. But thankfully, Melinda, you're gifting us, I'm going to give you credit, gifting us with a nice weekend forecast there. I appreciate that. So tomorrow, not as severe of a storm threat, still in the forecast, but this evening, quite a bit of storm activity, and we're just continuing to watch those track in that kind of northeast direction here.
Yes, Matt, so I'm just going to bring up here the rotation detector. So we're starting to look at a bit of rotation just north of Milton. So once again, that's the storm that Mark is on, potentially could be rotating once again. So hopefully he'll have some information on that quite shortly. But you know, these storms continue to bring quite a bit of rainfall. Let's zoom into that same area. You know, looking at those reds, the yellows, the oranges, that's also indicating very heavy amounts of rainfall, and we could be looking at the potential for being rotating as well. But right now, just still looking at the severe thunderstorm warning. Environment Canada has not issued yet tornado watch or tornado warning yet.
Yeah, we will be touching base with our storm chaser, Mark Robinson, who's out there in the field alongside other meteorologists, keeping an eye on the ground. Great to get that update because he's right there in the thick of it. So we'll be touching base with Mark shortly. Let's take a look at some of the visuals. This in Halton Hills, I believe this is from Mark. And just the lightning, really, he was telling us just how strong the winds were as well. And it does seem like this is the kind of weather we're seeing with these storms as Melinda, they're tracking kind of through these very populated areas right around time. It's time to go home from work. So a lot of folks might be caught driving in this.
That's the unfortunate thing as we get into the later hours, as your commute, you know, start to see more of that heavier rainfall. But, you know, once again, the best advice I could give is to just keep your distance and, you know, make sure you're monitoring the sky as well as the roadways in front of you.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Melinda, we're continuing with our live coverage, and we will be right here with you. Thank you for watching at home as we continue to see these severe storms moving through. As it stands right now, the only area in Southern Ontario under a severe thunderstorm warning, you see there in red, that is where the tornado warning was in effect earlier. So that serious situation, as it stands right now, downgraded that area in red for Halton Hills and Milton to a severe thunderstorm warning. So as of the latest update from Environment Canada, a storm located near Speyside moving east at 25 kilometers per hour. Heavy downpours approaching 50 millimeters in that area, that red thunderstorm warned area. Pea to dime-sized hail as well. A number of communities in yellow there, you see that's the severe thunderstorm watch. So not quite seeing that severe weather. Here's that difference. The watch, kind of the less severe of the two. The warning is, hey, it's time to act. That severe weather is occurring or is imminent. But the areas under the thunderstorm watches, which encompasses all those areas in yellow we just saw, main hazards for the areas in yellow, heavy downpours, rainfalls could exceed 75 millimeters, Melinda. Also, wind gusts 70 to 90 kilometers per hour, and that risk of a tornado still included in these thunderstorm watches from Environment Canada. So we'll continue to keep an eye here.
You know, man, I just actually refreshed one of the warnings here on my other computer, and they included total rainfall amounts of 50 to 75 millimeters over a few areas.
Yeah.
So we could be looking at some more rainfall on the way, especially as these storms track into the GTA. Risk of a tornado was still on there, as well as winds gusting 90 kilometers per hour, as well as heavy downpours.
Yep, you got it. Now, Melinda, let's get some new graphics up. Those are where we have our weather alerts currently in effect. The warning in red. So that is where we see the most severe weather. We'll be touching base with Mark Robinson in just a moment. He's out there in the field. Now, that area in orange, this is what we've been kind of working with today. This was what we put together at the Weather Network for our severe storm risk for our Thursday today. Kind of falling in line, right? That area in orange where we saw the potential for the greatest severe storms, and that's pretty well covering where we've seen some of that very nasty weather today. As you can see, lots of southern Ontario in yellow with that likelihood of thunderstorms. Now, Melinda, this tracking towards Toronto, the city of Toronto currently under a severe thunderstorm watch. Can we maybe time it out once again for our viewers at home? When or just what's the timeline of how these storms are tracking? Because it doesn't seem like this is going to be done in 30 minutes. I think we'll be kind of riding these storms for a little while here.
Yeah, you know, if you're in the city of Toronto, you're probably looking up and you're like, what storm are they talking about? But if you look towards the north end of the GTA, you could probably look at some cloudier, darker skies in a way. But we are going to continue to see these storms track in through the north end of the GTA within the coming hours. Then later into we'll start to see a bit more of that rainfall make its way in through, you know, Vaughan, Markham, city itself of Toronto, and then make its way out of the region, hopefully around that 9-10 o'clock hour. We could be still looking at, you know, some rainfall as well, but the heaviest storms will be out throughout Mount Forest, Grand Bend, Owens Sound. Those areas will be looking more so at another round of thunderstorms making its way late Thursday overnight. And then as we head into, you know, early Friday morning, looking at storms impacting cottage country, some scattered showers across the GTA, and then the threat for storms continues later as we head in through the early to late afternoon. We'll start to see more of those stormier conditions across the GTA. It's pretty much going to be right along the 401 corridor.
So, Melinda, you caught me checking my watch a second ago there. I'm just looking because really, as it gets later in the evening, there's a bit of a, you know, there's a better chance the storms start to die out, right? As we kind of get losing that sunlight. Could you break that down for us? So why, as it gets later into the evening, do we start to see the storms not have as much energy and things kind of quiet down?
Yeah, so basically when we lose daytime heating, that is what helps to fuel our thunderstorms. You know, we talk about CAPE a lot. CAPE is thunderstorm fuel. It stands for convective available potential energy. So that's pretty much how when we get that daytime heating, you know, the sun beating down on us, even depending on the direction of the wind as well, can bring warmer conditions. That's what helps to make these storms rise. You know, warm air rises, cold air descends. So that's when we get that lift to fuel our storms. But even with very high amounts of CAPE, we can get, you know, a bit of rotation within those storms once we have the wind shear in place as well. But, you know, like you mentioned, once we start to lose that daytime heating, we lose the severity of the storms. And especially like tornadoes, they don't occur, it's very rare, I should say, to occur during the overnight to early morning hours because there's not a lot of energy left. But sometimes all you need is a quick trigger to help these storms come together.
Man, this video near Arthur, really incredible. Yeah, what looks like a funnel cloud. Now we do have, as it stands, some severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. Now, Melinda, I appreciate that breakdown because like you're saying, ultimately, yes, the heat, the energy from the sun can really just add to that instability to fuel storms. And we certainly had a sunny start to the day, and that kind of maybe stirred the pot and has set us up for pretty stormy looking evening. But like you're saying, as the sun goes down, which sunset is getting a bit earlier and earlier these days. I hate to break it to you, Melinda. I know you. Anyway, We are seeing eventually these things will start to quiet down, but we're not that close to things quieting down yet. It looks like the stormy weather a bit more in store here, and there's the energy. You were talking about the cape that the storms have to draw on, and that is still right in the mix, right into tomorrow afternoon. I can see you're already fast forwarding to tomorrow, but it looks like this is the more severe storm threat today, right, Melinda? Tomorrow, not quite as widespread, although some parts of Ontario could see some severe storms tomorrow.
Yeah, today is the more so the bulk of the stormier action. We will continue to see storms tomorrow. The risk is still there, but it's mainly going to be, popcorn storm cells, whereas today we did see popcorn cells, but once we started getting a bit more of them, they started clustering together and become as one big, large storm.
No doubt. We have seen, not the popcorn effect tonight. It's been quite large cells. I don't know what the step above popcorn is on the size chart, but that's a good look at tomorrow. Here are the weather alerts currently in effect. So the area in red is where that tornado warning was in effect earlier for Halton Hills and Milton. Everywhere else in yellow, thank you. As you zoom in there, Melinda, that is where the severe thunderstorm watches are in effect. So if you're in an area in red, that means, hey, the severe weather is imminent. You wouldn't want to be on the road. Everywhere else in yellow, which, Melinda, you could imagine at this hour just how many people are on the highways, heading out of the GTA, heading back home. Could be dealing with some pretty nasty weather. And like you mentioned, these things have really congealed. We have some pretty big storm cells that are kind of shoulder to shoulder here. And it looks like if you're kind of caught in that, you could be, again, seeing these heavy downpours for quite some time.
Exactly. That storm just where that severe thunderstorm warning is, it's still catching my eye because even though the storms across the north are moving faster, this one is more so almost stationary, I want to say, we've been seeing, heavy amounts of rainfall. Mark is on the scene as well, tracking the storms as they move by. If you look closely, you can see the storm to the north moving a bit more faster than the storm to the south. And this is the one that's producing, heavy amounts of rainfall, almost torrential downpours. The risk for tornadoes is still there as well. And I can imagine the gusty winds, the outflow boundaries coming out from these storms can definitely be quite strong as well, Matt.
And I just want to interject. It looks like all the thunderstorm warnings are no longer in effect. So even though our radar is still showing the Milton, I think you can kind of see it flashing yellow now.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, so right now as it stands, we have severe thunderstorm watches in effect. So we don't quite see that level of severity that would warrant the warning. Everything has been downgraded to watches right now. But Melinda, as we say that, still we see those risks of heavy downpours. Rainfall could be up to 75 millimeters in some areas. Those strong wind gusts, those downbursts like you were talking about, we still have to look out for that. And in these areas where the watches are in effect, we could still see things develop into possibly that risk of a tornado. So we already had one tornado warning earlier today. It was about, I want to say, an hour and a half ago in the Halton Hills and Milton area. Here is our severe thunderstorm explainer. We've already been mentioning those strong wind gusts, hail. We've seen some of that smaller hail, not quite the Alberta 10-centimeter softball-sized hail from last week. That was unbelievable. Heavy rain we could see here in Ontario this evening as we are kind of meeting that criteria for some of that heavier rainfall totals. Like we mentioned, Melinda, 50 to 75 millimeters. So just to recap, no longer any warnings in effect, but Melinda, it doesn't seem like we're out of the woods yet. I don't think that would be a fair statement. Still quite a big constellation of storms have come together here.
Yeah, I brought that graphic up just because this is what Environment Canada is. It's kind of like their guideline as to when to issue a severe thunderstorm watch and a warning as well. And it's a heavy rainfall. They didn't give a number because different municipalities, different counties, different provinces, they all go through different rainfall criteria. So right now for us, with these warnings across the GTA extending in through Barrie, Owen Sound, looking at roughly 70 to possibly 40 to 50 millimeters of rainfall, but 70 to 90 km/h winds.
Yeah. Melinda, we just have a few minutes left of live coverage. Of course, we're going to be popping back on for more live coverage here in the Weather Network as we see potentially any of these storms upgraded. But as it stands right now, the only severe thunderstorm warning has been downgraded to a watch in that Halton Hills and Milton area. And Melinda, worth noting, that is where the tornado warning was in effect earlier today. But there's a good look. And you mentioned it's quite a clustered, but at the same time, widespread line of storms, right? They're all kind of close together, but really covering a large area. So we'll continue to look out for that heavy downpour, the flooding, Melinda. Again, we are kind of right in the midst of people driving home from work. So I guess we've been highlighting some of those main concerns, but maybe one more time before we sort of bounce from our live coverage, Melinda, can we time things out here? How is the evening going to progress?
Of course, Matt. You know, those storms will continue through the next few hours. Then we'll start to see, them tracking eastwards, moving in through, the GTA, Toronto, Markham, Brampton, Oshawa, making its way in through the east end of the GTA, impacting Pickering, Cobourg as well. And then we'll start to see some more storms across the north here, so impacting Cottage Country, the Kawarthas, impacting Georgian Bay, as well as areas along the shores of Huron. And then later, as we get into the overnight, those storms are going to track, into the areas. We could be looking at some nocturnal storms across Barrie, Orillia, Haliburton as well. We'll be looking at some scattered showers, very minimal risk though as we head into our early Friday morning. Then we'll start to see those storms popping up later as we get into the afternoon.
So a little bit of an overnight risk, maybe not quite as severe of storms, but it looks like, even around the midnight hour, you were showing heading into our Friday, maybe a bit of rain in the GTA area, so we can maybe look out for some wet conditions waking up to in the morning. But as you mentioned, a little bit more unsettled weather for our Friday as we get a look here, not quite as pronounced as what we dealt with for our Thursday today. Now, can you maybe give us a little bit more about our Friday afternoon? And then you have a good weekend forecast too for us, Melinda, so I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, let's take, I'm just going to fast forward here as we get into the afternoon hours. So we'll start to see more, popcorn cells developing, the single cells, small, very tiny thunderstorm is making its way through right along the 401 corridor. And then we'll start to see high pressure make its way through as well. So that's going to be giving way to clearing, lots of sunshine in place as well. Lots of hours of sunshine as we head in through Saturday. A bit less for Sunday, but the humidity returns into our Sunday. Here's a 7-day forecast for the city of Toronto as well. So Friday, stormy conditions. Saturday, Sunday, lots of sunshine, warming back up as we head into Sunday, 26. Feeling close to like 31. Even the overnight low for Monday is quite warm, 21 degrees. And then we'll start to see more of the stormier action Monday, Tuesday. And even looking at the pop, it's 80%. So it's quite of a bit of a risk there once again.
Yeah, interesting to know, right? Like low humidity to start off our weekend, but really building back in for Monday, Tuesday. And yeah, you mentioned the percentage of precipitation.
Yeah.
It seems like some fairly confident numbers here for maybe some more unsettled weather on our Monday and Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see how next week plays out, Melinda, because this week, last week, the story has been stormy weather in southern Ontario, very scattered in nature, bringing heavy downpours. And I guess, aside from things like tornado warnings, a lot of this welcome because it has been the past few months, Ontario, lots of southern Ontario communities kind of in that 50% range, usually seeing half or only seeing half the amount of the typical rainfall. So it has been quite dry, seeing some relief. Some of the wettest days of the year have been in the past 14 days or so in southern Ontario. Here's what we're dealing with right now, Melinda, as we wind down our live coverage. This is what's left of the weather alerts. We will continue to track some of these storms into the evening. As it stands right now, just thunderstorm watches in effect. No longer the tornado warning, no longer any severe thunderstorm warnings in effect, lots of watches. So Melinda, we appreciate all the insight you've been giving us throughout this hour or so of live coverage. We'll be with you here on the Weather Network as any more severe weather pops up. But as it stands right now, we're looking at heavy downpours, strong winds, even hail with some of these storms. And again, all those areas we just saw in yellow, there is that risk of a tornado, according to Environment Canada. Thank you for being with us on the Weather Network. Melinda Singh and Matt Hamill will stay with you.